I note the irony.
I know, talking about AI and summarizing with AI, and I know it's gonna be the normal, Ken. I'm sorry.
I know.
Hey, Ramin, how many people are in the room with you?
This is me, Khairul, and me. So
Yeah, Dr. Islam is here from Com Studies. Everybody else is, I think, going to be online.
Okay, great.
So he and I live in Oswego, so it was not hard to come in. So here we are.
It looked on the news this morning like Fulton was a mess.
Yeah. Well, Fulton generally is a mess, but that's besides the point. This is all being recorded, by the way, so there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I am Ramin Mohammadi. I'm the Associate Provost and going to be moderating today. Dr. Michael Murphy is going to run this particular session. He did a really great survey with students about their opinions about AI, and he's going to share some of that detail with the rest of us. I just ask that everyone make sure you have your full name as your screen name in Zoom so that we can do the attendance that I need to do for SALT. Other than that, I'm just going to hand it over to Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Great, thank you, Ramin. And actually, maybe we could just take a minute here at the beginning. I won't. I don't come alone. I actually, the two writing fellows, Ken Nichols and Amanda Trainham, are here with me. So I'll introduce and say hello to them. And then I'll also ask if we could just go around and quickly sort of introduce ourselves. Again, I am Michael Murphy. I'm the coordinator of writing across the curriculum and the director of the college writing program, the first year writing program in the English department here on campus. So if we could just go around, maybe I'll call people out in connection with the way that they appear on my screen. Ken, you are to my immediate right.
I'm Kenneth Nichols. I teach in the English department, and I'm a writing fellow. I teach mostly English 102, but also creative writing classes.
Thanks, Ken. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Trainham. I also teach in the English and Creative Writing department, and I'm also a writing fellow. And I just recently started teaching the honors literature section 204.
Great. Thanks. And then on my screen, just so we get through this quickly, I see Erica next.
Hi, I am the learning designer at SUNY ESF. So I'm just hopping into some Oswego trainings to soak it all up.
Great, welcome. We're happy to have you. And Nicole?
I am Nicole. I am a librarian at SUNY Oswego, and Amanda, I love your background.
Thank you. I wish it was real, but it's not.
No. I wish that's what the library looks like.
And Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jen in the Biological Sciences department. We teach a number of fairly writing-intensive capstone classes, and so we're trying to wrap our heads around meeting the students' needs as well as still teaching them how to write. So very curious to hear some of this. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, Ben?
Hello, I am Ben Rodden, Senior Instructional Designer at SUNY Canton.
Thank you. David?
Hi, I'm David Kreider. I teach some of the writing intensive classes in broadcasting, like media management and media law.
Great, thank you. Greg?
Everybody, Greg Ketchum, Assistant Dean, Extended Learning here.
Great, thanks, Greg. Teresa, we're just introducing ourselves. I know you've just signed on. I don't know if you're ready to, okay.
I'm good. I'm Associate Director of Instructional Design in the Division of Extended Learning.
Great, thank you. And Ramin, do you want to say hello? I know you already have a little.
You can't see me, but I'm back here. Ramin Mohammadi, the Associate Provost.
Great. And then
I don't know if you can see me, but my name is Khairul Islam. Actually, I'm an assistant professor of public relations. So I teach public relations classes. And this semester, I'm teaching in an exciting class called Generative AI in Public Relations. So, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else in the room? We're all good?
That's all.
Okay, great. Thanks again. Let me go ahead and share screen, and I will just keep my fingers crossed that I do this properly. I never seem to be able to run the slideshow and make it big and have it appear. But I think I got it this time. Is that right? You guys can see my screen?
Is loading.
It's loading. Anything yet? It should just be the title slide.
It showed the title slide for half a second and then went into loading.
Oh,
Maybe on share and share again, see if it helps.
let's see. Let me try to simply share the desktop and see if that works better. Oops. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great, great. Thank you. And again, thanks very much for coming. What the purpose today is just to sort of let people know what it is that we found writing across the curriculum found when it did a survey of students this semester. The Writing Across the Curriculum Committee is composed of faculty across campus, faculty and staff members across campus. And Ken and Amanda and I, when we went and did a sort of a tour of faculty in each school or college last spring, found lots of sort of curiosity about just what it was that students were doing with AI. People seemed to, there was lots of kind of speculation, but people didn't really seem to have any kind of basic ground for a sense of what students really did with AI and how they felt about it. So the survey looked essentially like this. Again, the Writing Across Curriculum Steering Committee sponsored it. It was available to all undergraduates. 5,308 emails were sent. And available between September 16th and October 31st this fall. We got just under 9%, I think, 482 qualified responses. That is students who more or less completed the survey in 56 different majors. So lots of majors represented. It consisted of 7 Likert scale and then 2 written response questions. Okay, so I'll show you some of those responses as we go on. If anybody wants, you should be able to click here. Oh, shoot, and I forgot to share these slides. Remind me to do that I won't risk losing my screen here, but remind me to do that at the end. I would encourage people to go and see two things. First, the report prepared ably by Anna Croyle in Institutional Research does a nice kind of overview of the data, and then the full set of written responses to those final 2 questions, which I think are really interesting. It's really interesting to hear student voices directly in this kind of data, I think. So you have a sense of the sort of distribution of the response. I thought that our response in terms both of class standing and in terms of majors was really good. We got, there was some level of business administration was the most highest response, but also represented least proportionally. There were fewer business majors who responded, in relation to the overall number of business majors. But by and large, we were in line with the kind of the population of majors, students in each major. We were also pretty squarely in line with class standing. We got a good response at all levels, which has not been my experience in the past doing surveys on campus. Where we did not get an especially good or proportional response was in terms of GPA. And this, I think, is in keeping with the way that these surveys typically go. We got responses, by and large, at 3.5 or above. Students who struggle tend not to complete surveys, I think, in the generally speaking. And again, it was our experience here. Okay. In terms of like basic results, just the kind of basic things that we found, discovered as we did this, only 10% of students said that they used AI daily or weekly. We asked about frequency of use. 60% say they have tried it at least once. I think that number was a little bit lower than some people guessed. 36% say they have never used it. Only 12% estimated that they used generative AI on more than 20% of their writing assignments, which again was a number that seemed, I think, a little low for lots of us. 58% said that they used generative AI or had used generative AI for some reason outside school in non-academic work, writing, research, or something else. 3.5% only indicated use of I'm sorry, this should be premium and not free. I'll have to make that change. Three and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought I'm looking up the numbers now.
These should be flipped. Yes, and thank you for the quality control, Ken. Yeah, it's essentially 96.5% used free versions. Only 3.5% used premium versions, and I think that's in keeping with the way that this student surveys on other campuses and in other places. Students also, I think this is probably interesting for lots of people involved in this discussion, strongly agreed by Likert scale. I don't have an exact distribution on this, but strongly agreed, 4.3 out of 5 on a disagree, strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree scale. 4.3 out of 5. 5 again, representing strongly agree that submitting language generated by AI without acknowledgement was dishonest. So at the level of, the sort of academic dishonesty litmus test, I think there's a strong sense that students perceive this to be dishonest. In terms of less sort of immediate and tangible kinds of things, with the questions, things that we discovered as we did this, both the writing fellows and I, and then also the writing cross curriculum steering committee, things that people seem to sort of like struck by or surprised by, that I would call kind of important takeaways, seem to be first that lots of students were really deeply suspicious and skeptical about AI. Students really seem to have a negative, strongly negative response to AI. And really often it was for good reasons that struck us as really good, both intellectual and ethical. Again, that was registered kind of strongly, especially in those written responses, which I'll show you a few of in a few minutes. We also noticed that students wanted, it was hard not to notice, students wanted a clearer overall campus policy on AI. They really wanted to know like what's okay and what's not. In ways that would guide them with their work. We also noticed that students had I think this is maybe more striking for me than for other people, but it felt to me like students had a relatively strong grasp overall of how AI works technologically. They did not think of it as this sort of like magic that they could not, they kind of had a sense of what AI did and how that fed into AI's limits and dangers. I would also say I noticed this may be more my own sort of an observation than a universal one, but it felt to me like the survey confirmed something that I'd been sensing with my own students, which was that there may be finding their way to using AI in more sophisticated and sort of like mid-process uses than they had been a year or so ago. And I think that most people kind of imagined. I think people, in fact, I've said this to students, that the probably best uses for AI are at the like very beginning of the writing process, when you're brainstorming, developing a thought, trying to sort of take a measure of what the conventional wisdom is, right? And then again at the end, with sentences you're struggling with or to sort of polish. But I think students were finding other kinds of ways to use AI. I think that was reflected in some way in the survey that I think will be more and more frequently. I think we'll see more of in student writing. I want to go into each of these at least a little bit more deeply and show you a little bit of the language or the results from the survey that spoke to this. First, this notion that students were really suspicious and skeptical about AI. I want to qualify this at least a little bit. That is that 55 of the 257 responses were like generally positive. And here are two good examples. It's great that is AI, is great for understanding complex readings. When I receive a reading which I don't understand, I usually go to an AI bot to break it down and explain. I also use it when I'm stuck on making a thesis or hypothesis for any type of essay. It's a great tool, but very easy to abuse. A public relations major says this. A childhood ed major says, I believe that it helps me get ideas on what to write about, and it helps when I'm feeling stuck. So instead of giving up, it helps me to continue with my work. There were a fair number of students. Again, 55 of the 257 responses that we got to this question. But because these questions about use and experience, if students said I didn't use it, and 40% essentially said we don't use AI, they will have been directed to they would not have even seen this question. So, but anyway, there were some positive responses, but what seemed really striking were the negative ones. 106 of the both in terms of number. So that I think there were again, what did I say here? 55 positive responses, something like 90 or 95 neutral responses, and then 106 negative ones. And some of them were really like strongly and strikingly negative. This from a psychology major. I think generative AI is harmful, encourages students to be lazy, and one student using it takes away from the effort of other students that put in the effort to get an assignment done without AI. The sort of like fairness issue was one significant sort of thread of these comments. I think it also leads to many errors in whatever assignment it's being used for. Students were also skeptical about its utility and reliability. The use of AI for any reason, including academic, but also personal, is dishonest and lazy. I think people who believe that crafting AI prompts, prompt engineering for AI or using AI and refining its answers is a justifiable amount of effort are wrong and frankly a little dumb. The idea that it could even be considered to be allowed for academic use in college is honestly scary to me. And I would say, Ken and Amanda, I don't know, you can weigh in if you have some sense of this, but it seemed to me like there was a fair amount of outrage, of this sort about AI. So
I'll agree. I think a lot of students, pardon me, I've heard a lot of students like graphic designers who are realizing that their entry-level jobs, they were anticipating getting no longer exist. Same thing in writing, craft, a lot of the entry-level, lower-level tasks are no longer an opportunity. And so they're scared about that.
yes, that was another significant thread in the negative responses. A business administration major, these responses again seemed to come from across campus. We didn't seem connected narrowly in most cases to particular majors. LLMs and AI search engines should not be used in the research or writing process in academia, period. Using it in any way further than a spell checker is essentially plagiarism, which can already result in a student's expulsion from school. Allowing AI as a writing tool is to invite academic dishonesty and promote a lack of understanding on any subject. Oops, I'm sorry, Ken. Creating a geologist says creating is a human skill that cannot be replaced. By using AI, we're taking away from what makes us human. By using AI, we're taking away our brain's creative freedom and numbing it by removing the necessity of creative thought. Everything that's been discovered that AI knows was discovered due to human innovation and creative thinking. AI does nothing but loop information back at us that we as a society already know without giving room for growth. Some responses were really negative. People who use generative AI as a substitute for writing miss the value of communication with fellow human beings. It makes me sad and scared for our future. Computer scientist. A history major says, I hate it. I know I can do better myself, and I don't see the point of outsourcing my assignments and personal projects to give me lifeless writing. A biology major says, I would cut my arm off before I use that dog S. I effing hate AI. And an adolescent ed major says, death, fire, burn, I hope it will cease to exist. So again, these were some pretty adamant and sometimes eloquent, I think, responses. So in terms of wanting, and I'm sorry, I'm moving the Zoom screen around my own screen to, so if you see me either fiddling or advancing or going back or forth in the slides, my apologies. This second point, the students wanted a clear overall policy on what's okay and what's not. I think clarity, if you did a word cloud analysis of like clarity would be like a clear, and clarity would be a huge portion of this set of responses in the middle. Human resources management major says clear policies regarding AI, whether it's acceptable or not, clearly defining instances when it's okay to use it, defining instances when it's not. An anthropology major clear guidance on where it's okay and where it's plagiarism. A creative writing major, I would like to see them encourage or differentiate honest versus dishonest ways of using AI. I think doing entire assignments is dishonest, but using it to organize, proofread feedback on what you did is not. A strong thread of these responses also had to do with citation. Clearly defined terms on when to cite. We don't cite spell check on Microsoft Word, which of course is a good point, when uses of AI cross into citation requirement. You know, the student wants to know that. A graphic design major, criminal justice major says very clear instructions on what is and what is not allowed. Again, seemed the real kind of takeaway here. We also, again, I was kind of suggesting I've had some students using AI in ways that oh, I'm sorry, wrong issue here. I was impressed by again how clearly students clearly and deeply students seem to understand the technology and the ways in which it's that sort of function limited the kinds of answers you might get. A journalism major says AI bots are all scraping their writing from other sources as generative AI needs to be trained on pre-existing writing. And one thing I thought was impressive here was their sort of command of language connected to technology that I think we often assume that lots of them don't share. Very few AI bots acknowledge this, and many of the sources they have used to train these chatbots are used without the knowledge or permission of the original writers. Literally, plagiarism to machines often incorrect, since what they generate, since they're incapable of noting when a source they have been trained on is also incorrect or biased. They do not have the critical thinking skills of a human, since they're just a bot programmed to collect information, cannot fact check. They're dangerous and anti-intellectual. Generative AI, a biology major, is built on stolen information in all its forms. Using text-generating AI bots like ChatGPT relies on the work of uncredited and non-consenting authors and creators. Lots of attention in the responses to copyright and ownership issues. And using generative AI to create images is built on stolen images without the artist's permission. Generating writing and artwork with AI is also terrible for factual information, as AI cannot actually know anything, just the mathematical model guessing what word or pixel should be next. So again, students seemed relatively conscious both of how AI worked and of its limits. I'll also say that again, this is my sort of a sense. I found that the information in some ways spoke to and confirmed some of the things I've been seeing with students. And I'll just like quickly point to this chart, which the responses to our questions about, they were not put in this order, but our questions about what parts of the writing process did you find AI helpful in relation to it. So this is a Likert scale question, 1 to 5. Most students found writing as a first draft, this thing that I think that we all sort of suspect that students may use AI for, that we worry most about students using AI for, that they don't typically use AI to just like write a draft of a paper. I think they're especially these days, quite recently, I to my mind, beginning to use AI in more complicated and interesting ways, exploring alternate phrasings, especially, as well as organizing ideas. I noticed this strongly with my students this fall. I'll only say in my first year writing course, I asked them not to use AI on any papers except one, in which I let them use it in any way they want to. Then they have to sort of reflect, short of ghost authorship, and then they have to reflect on its use afterwards. What's a useful way to use AI? I found a lot of students using AI in ways that I think are this semi-analog to like Facetune with selfies. Like it was, the way I think of it is like it was them but better. And I was quite skeptical that that could be the case in some ways, but I did feel convinced as I read their work in sort of in drafts and then in final form. They had not lost themselves in this sort of giving their language over to AI to organize and to rework a little bit. Anyway, you can see here that, again, those sorts of uses, mid-process uses of AI. How do I understand the readings? Well, here at the end, how do I edit and proofread? Right? Those, again, were strongly represented in the responses of students. Okay, I'm going to pause here a minute because I notice I'm so bad at Zoom presentation. The Anna Mills presentation that last week. She was wonderful. Like reading the chat as she we went on and did her. She's really good at that, and I'm just terrible at it. But are there questions here that I should?
I don't see any questions, Michael. A lot of comments about other presentations and presentations we've already had, but
Okay.
I didn't see any questions.
Great. I will simply go on then here with some recommendations. I think that the writing fellows and I would make about instructor use of how instructors work with students, student writers, sort of in an AI age. Not necessarily even student writers who've been invited to use AI. The thing that I think we got most clearly from this survey, or one of the things we got most clearly, was that students did know that their instructors had been pretty clear about, most instructors have been pretty clear about when they could and could not use AI, when it was permissible. They really appreciated that. They really did want that very much. So that's one thing that we would strongly recommend. Two things that I think I'm going to recommend actually to English 102 instructors, that is instructors in first year writing courses. I think that we, in this age of AI where, I don't know, people may identify, sometimes it feels, as you read student work, it feels like this sort of house of mirrors. You don't know what's theirs. You don't know what came from it. It's hard to sort of always understand the process, how the words got on the page, got on the screen. And so in two ways, I guess I would recommend that instructors try to open some kind of window, not just into the final version of what they get, not to just read this sort of but to be involved in some way in the process, like conference with students, approve topics, help them sort of pick out sources, suggest ways in which some sources may be better than others. If I think to whatever extent we are involved in the development of the idea that students write about, the more strongly we'll be able to have a sense of their use of AI and encourage healthy writing practices, kind of all sorts. Amanda, you were I think you had something to say about that.
Well, yeah, I think 102, we kind of have I will call it a luxury of walking students through this process, maybe a little bit easier than some other disciplines across campus. But what I've found is that, and again, there is this kind of instability where we really can't 100% always know if something is created by AI or not 100% of the time. But I feel that in my 102 classes, because I don't make their essays kind of set in stone, like hand it in and that's the end of it and you could never touch it again, it kind of makes it so they feel less anxiety about making something perfect. So there's not like this perfectionist instinct that they have to have, which I think is a big contributing factor to them wanting to cheat or use AI. So what I would think is a good recommendation is, if you have higher staked writing, perhaps allow some revising for it. So if they get a grade they don't particularly they're not proud of or they don't like, they could revise it for something better. I feel like that helps students with that anxiety of having to create something perfect from the get-go, which is all a part of that collaborative process, scaffolding and all that, all those good tricks.
Yep, I think that's true.
Yeah, because oh, sorry, Mike, I don't mean to cut you
Okay,
off.
go ahead. Go ahead, Amanda.
Because like something I was thinking about as you were the previous few slides is that we often think about AI through our own lens as instructors or people who are faculty members, but we kind of lose that students feel similar anxieties that we do about AI. I mean, we see it with these results that students are very anxious about, and it comes in all forms. Poor writers are anxious about producing good writing. Good writers are anxious about being thought they did use AI because they're very, they're very good at writing. And so just like we have anxieties, they do as well. And so if we help them through that process slower, like through collaborative processes, it could help them find the confidence for those who are struggling or feel as though their work is appreciated for those who are already fairly successful or good writers.
Yeah, I think that's true. A kind of culture, as we have always tried to encourage in writing cross curriculum, a culture of revision and process, attention to process, I think matters a lot. You also mentioned the idea that, that some students, it's just going to, little asterisk in quick note, that students sometimes are anxious that their instructors will see their work as AI generated when it's not. We did get a strong, it wasn't a, we didn't get lots of comments, but there was those comments were registered in the data, as was some level of skepticism about faculty and instructor use of AI. That is, some students seemed concerned that faculty might use AI to read or to respond, to generate rubrics in ways that they worried might not be fair or authentic. I'll also say another sort of a window into process, and another thing that I will recommend to English 102 instructors is author's notes. We've done this in 102, lots of us, pretty frequently. That is to ask students to account for the process as they turn in a final paper. I think that's again, offers some kind of a window into the process that can be really useful. I also would recommend, some students seem to say, they noted that some faculty had spoken to them in class and in ways that they seem to really value about the utility or lack of utility of AI, especially from the perspective of their discipline. So not just clear policies, but I think some level of discussion in class about this issue, I think is a really useful thing. We will also remind people, and I think Ken, you had thoughts about this. Remind people that AI use is like detectable, though I've said it's sort of a house of mirrors. Sometimes you can tell sometimes it's not. Sometimes it feels relatively clear when a passage isn't generated by the same hand that so other papers in class or other sections of a paper were. So it's detectable, and violations of AI policy are enforceable. Ken, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I'm not saying in a Joe Friday way where you don't want to scare the kids, and especially in English 102, it's much more of a learning experience where you're helping them to build up and learn the process, so when they get to the upper division classes, they understand the skills. But part of it is just letting them know, like, we've read thousands of papers. We know what writing sounds like from a student at your level, and also, like we said, teaching them the proper ways to use the technology, just like they can't copy without attribution a whole paragraph from another paper. They can't copy from the AI. So it's the same in that respect. And it's about just putting the use of the technology into proper context.
Great. Yes, true. I'll also note, this is a screenshot from a meeting of the college writing committee, which is the group that oversees helps develop policy for the teaching of English 1-2. It's hard to see here, but one of our instructors, Sean Milligan, the fourth face down on the right, was explaining a practice that he's developed to help him talk with students about language that seemed AI generated. And basically what he did was try to sort of reverse engineer the prompt that they used. What was likely the question that they asked AI, and finds that the language is quite simple. It's not exact. It's not like cut and paste plagiarism where you just sort of Google a passage, but that you can see language. If you enter the same prompt repeatedly, you'll get quite similar, not exact, but quite similar kinds of responses. So that here, for example, we get social media has become an integral part of adolescents' lives, shaping their social interactions, identity formation, and self-perception. That's the hit that Sean got. And then in the paper, he found in the new media age, social media has become a foundational part of adolescent life, reshaping how teenagers socialize, communicate, and perceive everything in the world surrounding them. And so again, really similar sorts of phrasing and sentence structures. Oh, to Tony Caputa, the last face down on the right, was also suggesting, and I think this is true, that AI seems to love three-part kinds of constructions. That is an integral part of adolescents' life, shaping their social interactions, identity formation, and self-perception, or reshaping how teenagers socialize, communicate, and perceive everything. Again, there seem to be certain sorts of phrasing, even ways to construct sentences that seem typical of AI. So okay, that's my set of kind of observations. And I guess I'll just open the floor to comments or questions. Anybody?
I guess I'm gonna raise my hand myself. So, Michael, you mentioned in terms of clear statement in the syllabus, so I like all of those statements. The last one was that AI is detectable and enforceable, the policy is. Could you clarify that? There are lots of conversation there around.
I'm not sure the extent to which I can clarify entirely. Either the process or the policy, which you're right, I think is changing at this moment. I will only say that two things, that AI, I think it's been the experience of instructors. It's been my experience and the experience of instructors in 102 that if you plumb with students a little bit, this does not sound like your language. Can you tell me a little bit about where this idea came from? What this word that you use, what's it mean? The same kinds of questions that we used to ask students about cut and paste plagiarism. I find that students are typically, especially if this does not seem, like Ken's saying, a gotcha kind of moment, that students tend to be honest and do sort of respond. I'll also say that it's Sean's experience that at the level of the dean, this kind of comparison holds up. That, if you want to sort of report a student for academic dishonesty at the level of, this really does not sound like you. It sounds very much like the kind of discourse, the same basic set of ideas, maybe loosely paraphrased and probably generated by a different query. Again, the associate deans have honored that. At least my sense is that in liberal arts and sciences, that's been the case. I don't know if that helps, Gairul.
Very helpful, very helpful. I thought there's some detection tools already been developed that is agreeable. Seems like not.
Well,
There are tools that have been developed. However, they're extremely they're not reliable. You can't just plug it in and immediately boom and then email the student. It's much more complicated.
And I think
just a quick comment about academic policies. Our deans have been working on intellectual integrity, language update. There is a presentation that the associate deans will have tomorrow. I think it's a 10 o'clock or an 11 o'clock session, session that is scheduled and it's going to be repeated, where they'll talk about just general issues related to intellectual integrity, but also they will cover AI. I think there is really three things faculty have to do. I mean, either you got to decide that it's not allowed, and you got to make that clear. It may be that you decide it's allowed in some situations, but not in other situations. Now that has to be made clear. Or you decide it's allowed to be used. I mean, you frame problems in a manner that maybe they could use it to help, but they can't really use it to do the work. And I think some of us have felt we could do that, and some people may decide that they can't do that, in which case you have to provide a framework. And then the other thing that I've noticed is that faculty who don't want students to use AI create parameters that create constraints that you can't really use AI. I mean, you say contextual things that there's no way you could get it out of AI in a manner that if it comes out of it, it would sound really bogus, and then you would easily can detect it. So we have some role and responsibility in creating the framework if you don't want people to use it at all. But I think I certainly prefer to see people think harder about the way maybe it would be productive and helpful, and perhaps think through that a little bit more, because it's easy to just, write it off but the reality is people in professional life, they are utilizing the tool. So if we're not helping our students figure out how to productively use it, we're not really helping them if we are not. So I just wanted to share both the framework that the deans are working on, and then some ideas that, we do have a responsibility in figuring out how we want our students to use the tool.
Thanks, Ramin. I was going to say two things. First, that sense of the sort of inadequacies of detection services. I think that's partly what students were responding to. The sense that, I think they're often expressed in terms of percentages, and that students have really did seem to worry, not a huge number, but the ones who worried about false accusation. I think kind of, again, at the level of this sort of gotcha detection. And then to Ramin, I was going to say, I totally agree about your sense from the perspective of writing, your sense of the great variability across context, discipline to discipline, and professional practice to professional practice. What's okay in certain contexts in, I don't know, marketing, right, is not okay in philosophy, right? And again, I think across disciplines, there will be a great deal of variety. But so I think it is incumbent on faculty members and on departments to explain sort of their standards with respect to that.
Thank you for that. I think Teresa had some comments. Teresa, do you want to unmute yourself and share some of that?
I went to the presentation yesterday from the Student Advisory Board for SCOLT, so the Student Advisory Board for the Center on Learning and Teaching. And the students were very, very, very much want guidance. And that not only do they want guidance, they, as I said in here too, they want faculty to be transparent on how they're using it. And I think that's fair. How are they using it for grading? If they are, how are they using it to help them in their creation of materials? I think that's fair. If we want our students to be upfront and honest, then we as instructors and faculty need to be transparent as well. And I thought that was really helpful in how I'm framing it and providing ideas potentially to support what we are doing as a campus for faculty in artificial intelligence. And also for my own little bit of teaching that I'm doing for GST 104. In fact, I really want, it's not something that is covered in GST 104, but because my students are fully online, I do want to create like a little module in there, talk about AI and encourage them to play with it a little bit so that as they continue on, they can at least see, okay, this might be a good way to use it, but it also helps them see where, if it's well clarified on how they can use it, it may help them as they move forward in their academic programs.
Yeah, I have a Gemini account now. And, you take a 2-page email and get it to summarize for me in half a paragraph. Good. When you get thousands of emails, I really don't feel I want to read a 2-page email. So, I mean, there are definitely definite benefits and then if I need to get to the details, then I get to the details, but then I get the gist of what the intent was from the author with the summary that Gemini produces. And I just started using it. I'm already thinking, yeah, that's helpful. So I think we're all going to find tools that add value. And it's not just ChatGPT, right? I mean, there's a whole array of possible options that are already existing or coming to exist soon enough. So,
yeah.
And I know a number of my colleagues are using it to help with writing their emails as far as tone. I mean, just things like that is so helpful, especially if you're someone who tends to write and you're very terse. And that gives the total wrong message if the only interaction you're having with, say, a student or individuals is through email. Being able to help with that tone, at least then it just makes, I think, those types of interactions and conversations a little bit easier.
Thank you, Teresa. I think, Ken, you had something to add.
Yeah, something you said, Ramin, all of us paying attention to this meeting, we've all spent decades learning how to write, how to think, how to analyze. Like we've developed all of these complicated cognitive processes. So it's interesting to see how students who, they're 18, so they haven't had those decades of preparation that we've had. How their AI use is different. Like, yeah, Ramin, like you've built up your brain. You can summarize your emails and lose nothing, and it's perfectly fine because of what you've done. But it's interesting to see what will happen with students who don't build those base level skills in whatever field using the AI to replace what ordinarily they would have built. It looks like Mike has a hand.
I was only going to piggyback off that a little bit to say that that's one of the things too that we noticed in the survey responses that I didn't put in the presentation, but that I noticed with my students too. That is this extent to which they feel cheated, like they feel like cheated out of this opportunity to learn something. They keep saying, my students say, the first time I did this. That is, I encourage students to use AI. There was some number, and I let them do it, who just they said, I don't want to, I came to college to learn. I really want, like they really did resist using AI. And we got that kind of registered in some way in the survey. I also wanted to connect that to your comment, Ramin, and you too, Teresa, that this sense of like faculty, totally, there are all kinds of good ways in which AI, I think, will be useful. But I will say, I want to go on record as writing across curriculum coordinator in worrying a little bit about the potential that I think students sense for faculty misuse of AI. If we sign on to one of those systems now available commercially online that will grade our students' papers for us, give them $20 a month, and they'll like eliminate your like 40 hours of work. I think students will feel deeply sold out, and will again feel cheated. I think that's not why they've come to college. most of them have come. It's not why we want them to come to college. So I think we need to be really, really careful, just as you say, Teresa, about those uses.
Well, thank you. We're almost out of time. Any last minute questions or comments? Well, thank you all for your participation. We had a couple of people who had to dredge through snow to get here. Thank you for coming in person, and the rest of you who were online avoided that trip, which is great. And Mike in the group, thank you very much for your sharing your insights and the students' survey results. So everything went very well. The recording of this will be available in our CELT site, so feel free to come back to it if you feel it would add value. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.